Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. It's no secret that trauma changes us. What is often the secret is the how it changes your behavior, your thought process, your nervous system, and how it helped you develop ways to keep yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically safe. I opened my computer this week and logged on to find an article that caught my attention on MSN entitled 10 Signs That Indicate a Person Has Lived a Hard and Challenging Life. The article confirmed many of the behaviors I've encountered both with my clients and even with myself from my own trauma. That's why I thought you and I should take a one-on-one deep dive into the interesting things you may be doing without realizing you are telling more of your life story than you may realize. Trauma changes you. Now it's time to figure out how it's showing up. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. It has been an interesting few weeks. There's been a few things that have come to my attention, into my awareness, that have made me stop, made me pause, made me have deeper conversations with people. One of the awarenesses is that many people have perceptions of us that are simply not true. And while I understand that and I see it every single day, when it's pointed inward, when it's pointed at you, you kind of look at it from a different perspective. There is this idea from the Instagram followers that I have that my life is perfect, that my story must be peaceful. And that's simply not the truth. Of course, there have been peaceful moments and there have been many things that have worked so well in my life. The overall truth is there have been many hard, downright harrowing experiences that have changed me. And we all know that trauma exists in our world. We are exposed to it, almost in the seconds at this point. And 100% of people have trauma. There's none of us that escape this lifetime without it bumping into or meeting something that defines us. It is a part of the human story. And in that journey of, living hard moments, we begin to develop behaviors, develop ways around those things in order to move through them. As you've heard me say a million times, if you're a regular listener here, the only way through something is through it. And it's the truth. And yet we have to also remember that as we make our way through it, we do things in order to keep ourselves safe. You heard me just say a few minutes ago that I opened my computer and saw an article that caught my attention, these 10 signs that indicate a person has lived a hard and challenging life. I had a few seconds, so I clicked into it. And honestly, it was one of those articles that is a slideshow. It didn't have a whole lot of information to it, but it was enough to get the wheels turning for me. It was enough to have this conversation and to, one, remind you that we never truly know someone's full story until they tell us. We create these visions in our head of the people that they are. And for every single human alive, they hold a different value and perception of who they are and of who someone else is than, say, the person next to them. Who I think you are is different than who your mother, your sister, your husband, whoever, your partner, your spouse. Doesn't matter who we're talking about. They hold a different perception of you because perhaps they know different parts of your story. It's so important to know that. It's where that adage, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, comes into play. But truly, We don't know someone intimately until we hear the details of their story from their point of view. Yet we also can see some things if we know, if we're trained, if we understand their behavior that shows the life that they've had somewhat, right? Again, we go back to this perception that my life must be calm all the time, and that's just not the truth. We make assumptions about people based on their behavior, but their behavior is telling. I always say your behavior will tell on you 100% more than the words that you actually say. In so many ways, if we step back and look at each individual behavior and how it shows up, then we can really know how someone has lived. There are subtle signs, and those are the things I want to talk about. The first behavior listed in the article is a dualistic character. It's the behavior of always being on two sides of the coin. You can be compassionate and empathetic. You know what it's like to walk in people's shoes. And then the other side of that coin is this harsh and overcritical behavior, this judgment that is a true defense mechanism. A lot of people will say, oh my gosh, they're so nice. They're the nicest person in the world. And then the other person across the table are like, what are you talking about? They are complete assholes. It's that person, right? Many people that experience life in this manner, who really their behavior is hot and cold, you don't know what you're going to get, are often labeled as narcissists. And often that's not the true case. They have this dualistic characterisms to them that has them keeping people away from the walls that they have built. This is the ultimate form of safety, right? I've had all of this pain. I've had all of these ways that I've been hurt, and I want to help. I don't want to be the person that taught me the things that hurt. Instead, I want to be the complete opposite. We see this a lot. I know I did this too, where you see an example and you know very intimately the things that that person did to hurt you, and you choose to go the complete opposite direction. You're like, nope, not going to hurt people in that way. And so you show up as this compassionate and empathetic soul. You'll do anything for anyone. A lot of times we turn into people pleasers, right? And we put ourselves up in a space where we will give and give and give. However, if you make us break, it is a massive break. It's judgmental, it's critical, it's harsh, it's nasty. When someone's behavior is confusing to you, where they are one person at this moment and the other person the next, understand that this is the wall. Don't get too close. Don't hurt me. I will never complain. I'm not going to get angry, to snapping the fingers of, you don't deserve this. This is you. You're a problem. This is judgment, whatever it may be. Know that their story has been a difficult one. When I see this in clients, when I hear the good, the bad, when I hear them trying to outrun their trauma by doing the good things, I know that that dualistic personality is really strong within them. And we work to clean that up so that all they really focus on is that compassionate soul, that person that loves themselves. Because remember, trauma doesn't teach us to not love the people that we experience trauma with. It teaches us to not love ourselves. That leads perfectly to number 2 on their list, and something that I often see in the majority of people who have experienced hard childhood trauma, and it is not knowing how to react to kindness. It's this automatic rejection of taking a compliment or being told what a good person they are or how smart they are. It's this feeling of, I'm not good enough, so anything that you happen to say to me is also going to translate into that's not good enough either. And they don't know how to absorb the goodness that's handed to them. Childhood trauma often teaches us that we deserve emotional abuse, that we deserve the way we have been treated. It teaches us to withdraw. The way that we solve this is to learn about ourselves, to know that the things that we've experienced, the hard, the challenging, the traumatic, isn't necessarily the defining point as to who we are. It's a piece of our story, a chapter that we can close and change the behavior from. We don't have to live the rest of our lives through these single points, these experiences. We can learn to take small compliments. We can learn to know how to allow ourselves small kindnesses. It's an important part of healing. If you never learn how to take or to react to these small acts, to this kindness piece that is always available to us, you will often ruin relationships and healthy friendships over them. People get tired of having to convince you of your worth in their eyes. They have a hard time continually putting value and effort and time into an experience that often just feels negative. So if this is you, know that you're showing your hard experiences, your trauma in this way. I know for me personally, I had to learn to hear the words and the intentions that someone was saying to me. Once I did that, I began to hear what someone said, and instead of rejecting it, I took it in. I decided to fact check what they were saying against what I felt about myself and began to use their words as motivation to change my inner conversation. And so think of it that way. If this is your behavior, how can you hear what is being said to you or done for you and realize that someone else holds value in you? There is a reason why someone wants to be within your presence, to be in your life. And it leads to number 3 on the list. Those who have gone through some stuff often have a great sense of humor. Sometimes it's a coping mechanism, and that's okay, right? You've heard me say before that coping mechanisms keep us alive. A lot of times they are these things that help us navigate just to stay okay when shit hits the fan, all right? So think about it this way. If you are someone with a great sense of humor, you probably have embraced a way to just laugh about it or a way to make inappropriate jokes. We were sitting at the dinner table this past week, and one thing I will tell you about our family is we are the kings and queens of inappropriateness. We will make jokes to make each other uncomfortable. We have a lot of fun together. And it is a coping mechanism. We've gone through things as a family unit of 5, and we have learned to laugh about it. We've learned to show up for one another in our humor. When hard things happen, you have a choice. You can go from not wanting to participate in life to making everything a joke. And it is a little hard sometimes when that is your mechanism to deal, right? Because people say, can't you ever be serious? Can't you ever just hear it? Do you have to make a joke out of everything? And sometimes the answer is yes, for those of us who operate that way, right? I know that my clients get a personal look of my humor a lot of times. And, Instagram doesn't necessarily, or TikTok or Clapper or any other place. It's something that I want to change because the real us is complicated and it's filled with all of our past that we've healed and unhealed and how we show up to it. And a great sense of humor is often an indicator that life has been less than favorable most of the time. Number 4 on their list of 10 takes the sense of humor and puts a little bit of a twist on it. And it is sharing a funny story that's actually quite traumatic. I see this so often. I hear it in my personal life. I have even done this, right? I see a lot of younger women do this too that haven't quite walked through their experiences yet. And it is where we tell a story that we think is funny, but it's actually quite traumatic, where it is a space where other people who've never had that experience before but understand trauma take a look at you and go, whoa, that's actually not funny. Or are you okay? Or why are you laughing about that? It's this space, again, where we try to twist it, make ourselves comfortable with it, and then make other people comfortable because humor is universal, right? Laughter is something that every person gets. Doesn't matter where you're from, what language you speak, or what religion you were raised in, or what culture. Doesn't matter, right? You get it. Humor is humor. And when we do this, when we share funny stories, at least stories that we think are funny, understand that what we're doing is we're trying to downgrade the fear, the upset, all of the negative emotions into this pretty little box and make it something that somebody else can swallow. It's actually a quite normal reaction. It's not something that we actually have to carry on, but it is something that happens as a way of changing our behavior and helping ourselves kind of navigate the rough things in life. Number 5, speaking of navigate, is being calm in stressful situations. This is something that I noticed about myself personally, and it's something that I've noticed about people who have really, really deep trauma. It's this way of staying unnaturally calm in situations when everyone else is in panic. So it's that space where someone may pass out, or there's a car accident, or there's a shooting, or there's a bad incident that's happening, and you're able to stay in your rational mind. You're able to stay locked in. And it's this thing that a lot of people think is a superpower, but let's be honest, it's a whole lot of disassociation. Okay. It's also that that hard situations have an end to them. It's these things that you actually are experienced in. It's normal to have this anxiety producing experiences. You know what to do because your nervous system knows what to do. Your brain actually says, I'm safe in this experience. I know how to navigate them. Remember, safe doesn't always mean safe. Safe means whatever I'm accustomed to, whatever I have experience for. This roadmap that allows me to act in a certain way. Staying calm in stressful situations, in these hardcore situations, is a telltale sign that you've seen a lot of hardship. It's a telltale sign that you know how to navigate. And so while it can be a superpower, it also can be a way of taking yourself out of the emotion and barreling through something. And then when you come up for air, you are just waterlogged with emotions. It's this weird dichotomy between okay and not okay. So if you stay calm in hard situations, you're telling on the fact that you've had a very hard past. I used to say out loud, even to people who would say, wow, you did so great in that moment. It was such a hard experience. I remember one time in particular, a child was hit in the crosswalk right in front of my car. And it was somebody that I knew. It was actually a classmate of my middle daughter. I hit the 911 button in my car, jumped out, and went to go render aid. There was a nurse that was in the crosswalk as well. She was able to do CPR at the time, where I ran back to the school to also get the other nurse before the three of us began to work on this child. It was a hard experience. I was so calm, so cool, so collected in that moment because my nervous system said, shut down, do not feel, just be in the moment. So if you think enough, you probably can find an experience like that where you have disassociated, and calm is actually something very different to you. We want to feel our way through every experience, but not be taken down by our feelings. The next one on the list, I will tell you, is a bit of a disservice. It's actually a good thing and a bad thing, and it is this strong sense of independence. People who have faced tough times show very big walls, right? They're very cautious. They're guarded. They will struggle to trust easily, and they have this fierce sense of independence. They have empathy for other people's struggles, but they will not show their struggles. It's this piece of independence that I find myself still really struggling with myself. You may be the same way. I don't need help, I will often say, and that's not true. We all need help. We all need connectivity. We have a hard time comprehending that other people want to step in and help us. We don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. It's easy when we have experienced hard things or we have experienced trauma to say, I've got this. I am the only person that I can rely on. I am the only one who is going to be able to get me through this experience. And so we lean into that. Trusting others is difficult. But here's the thing. If you never tell anyone your experiences, or you don't allow anyone in, you will have this vast lack of connectivity and fulfillment in your life. Being independent is important, but being so independent, so strongly independent that you can't even see over the walls that you've created, you will feel this sense of loneliness, this life satisfaction that is lacking. You will not feel like you have a sense of purpose. You will just feel like everything is a struggle. A lot of people who will say, life is tough and then you die, that is a good telltale sign too that they have had a hard past. Be independent, but don't be so hard-headed, so wall-focused, so driven in self-protection that you don't allow connectivity in your life. We're wired for it. Your trauma doesn't have to steal the ability to have something beautiful. And often it does. So think about that. Is your strong sense of independence because you want to take care of yourself, or is it because no one else took care of you? Think about it. It's a good way of seeing our behavior for what it is. And this is a behavior that can often slap us back in the face as we try to hold our boundary lines. That, of course, naturally leads to the next one on the list, number 7, which is trust issues. Scared people push people away. I'm just going to say that, right? Scared people hold boundary walls and lines because it's easier than getting hurt. Trust can only happen when safety is present. Understand that. If I do not feel safe, if you do not feel safe, there is no way for us to actually trust. It's very difficult. I was talking to someone early on in the therapy days where she was talking about her relationship. And in her background, there was a lot of family physical abuse. She was worried that if her significant other that she was really becoming very close to found out about her past, that he would feel that she wasn't worthy of continuing the relationship. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. But I also reminded her that anytime we don't actually hand over our story is the time that we don't allow someone to know the full us. There is a difference between handing over too much detail and just allowing people to see us for who we are. There's another piece to this. When we have trust issues, we tend to do a couple things that are also telltale signs. One is to say, I'm sorry, right? We apologize for everything. And then the other is to over explain ourselves. If you're apologizing for everything, you're really trying to soften the blow of rejection. That's really what it is. I don't trust that you're not going to hurt me because everyone else before you has. And so if I apologize, if I own the things that actually don't belong to me, then perhaps we can have a relationship that feels better than those that I've experienced before, or whatever it may be, right? And so know that if you are apologizing, this is a big sign that your trauma is still in action. Okay? If you are apologizing, it also means that you are putting your worth down on the ground by saying, I will own your problems as mine, and allowing someone else to have control over your feelings. If it's not yours to own, stop owning it. These are all things that we work through in therapy. Again, a behavior that is so common, so common. And again, if we have trust issues, we're likely to over-explain ourselves and all the things that we do. We're trying to protect ourselves from getting hurt. Let me give you my line of reason, my line of thought, so that perhaps you will not judge me or you will not reject me, that you will be okay with the way that I am showing up. It's fine. You don't have to explain every detail of your existence to someone else. And if you do feel that way, understand you do not have complete safety with that person as of yet. Doesn't mean it can't be built, just means that it isn't necessarily there yet. So think about it. Are you over apologizing? Are you scared and the walls are up? Are you scared to get close to people? Do you push good things away because it's easier? What is the deal? What are you over explaining? What are you apologizing for? One thing I will tell you, I remember meeting my husband and asking my mom at one point, what does being scared mean? And she said, generally, the things that we're most scared of are the things that we should be really focusing on. And it was that phrase, focusing on, that gave me the self-permission to lean into building the safety and therefore the trust. It's a really interesting thing. Scared people push people away. Trust issues over-explain. Trust and safety issues apologize. Think about this. Is this piece of trauma behavior in your day-to-day? If so, it has to be cleaned up. The next on the list, number 8, go hand in hand with everything. It's something that we sort of already touched on a little bit, but it's not asking for help, right? It's doing all the things. It's leaning in. It's needing to be the martyr at times. It's needing to be the hero at other times. It's not asking for help whenever it would definitely be easier on you and easier on people who are watching you. I know that a lot of people struggle with this. And one person said to me one time in session, if I ask for help, they're just going to reject me, or they're not going to do it the way that I want to anyway. And I said, well, one, they're not going to reject you. You don't know that to be true. You're forecasting, right? Because you haven't asked. So you don't know. And 2, the need for control is a trauma response. Okay? This need to have everything in a certain order, to have it be the way that you want it to be, and not asking for help doesn't show that other people don't want to show up for you. It just shows that you are scared of being vulnerable. You feel like it's dangerous to let those walls down. And it's the only way to build really valuable relationships, right? Not asking for help doesn't mean that you're so great at all of the hard shit that happens. It means that you're unwilling to actually be vulnerable. You'd rather conceal than complain. You'd rather conceal than ask for, the connectivity that you deserve. Not asking for help is not a badge of honor. Sorry, it's not. It's a trauma response. And so if this is you, we have to clean it up. We have to be willing to say, I am worth someone stepping in when I need someone to pick me up. When I need a hand, I'm going to hold it. This is self-permission at its finest. Number 9 on the list goes back to what we were just talking about, which is that need to over-explain everything because of trust and safety. And that comes down to having a complicated answer to even basic questions. I used to do this quite a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. I know a lot of people that do. It's where they are asked a very simple thing, like, where are you from? And then we give a full dissertation as to where we're from, why we're from there, how long we stayed there, what we liked about the place, and so forth and so on. It's like having 50 different answers for one simple question. It's a way of trying to give ourselves a sense of safety from a question that could lead itself into our background, right? Which, if we're responding this way, was traumatic or hard or challenging or whatever you want to label it as. So we try to put the walls up by giving so much information that that's the only thing we can focus on, because there's so much to get through that we divert away from what could possibly lead into the trust factor or even our background. It's even more so in the complication of our experiences too. This is another thing. It's something the article didn't talk about, but it's something I see all the time. When there's a heavy trauma background, we'll take a very simple thing and make it harder. It's like we need the challenge in order to feel like we've done something. I know I did this for a long time. And in fact, in a lot of ways, there's things that I still do this in. I'm not going to lie to you. Where something can be very straightforward, but then I need to put 50 other things in it to make it feel like it has true value. But really what I'm trying to do is give myself the value of the experience, or the atta girl for getting it done. You may be doing the same thing. It's a trauma response. And listen, all of the therapy in the world, all of the behavior identifications, all of the behavior modifications sometimes can't change the way that you actually show up. And in this way, is it truly harmful? No, not necessarily. Giving too much information on the onset, or giving a long dissertation of information, no. Or making something more complicated, yeah, you're adding stress, maybe some anxiety. But in the end, is it going to really cause you major problems? No. But you can get to a place where you're asking yourself, what is this worth? And is there a way that I could do this and then add, 2 other things that could add value to my goals or to my day or my experience that would be perhaps a little bit better for me? So begin to identify, do you take simple questions and make them into complicated answers? Do you take simple experiences and turn them into something that is far more challenging? If so, this is a behavior, a byproduct of trauma. The last one, I'm not going to lie, confused me until I realized that it wasn't titled correctly. Number 10 on the list is hoarding food. And I sat there and I was like, what? Hoarding food? And then I thought, oh, well, yeah, if you've experienced financial trauma, of course, that could be something. Or if you felt like there was a discrepancy in food, or there was a lack of food as a child, that's certainly something that we could see. But really what we need to talk about are these exit strategies that we create. What I mean by exit strategy is more so like ways that we navigate personal trauma through the behavior. So how can we exit or control the situation? When we talk about food, we can talk about it in multiple ways. One is that hoarding situation where there was a discrepancy of our needs being met. And of course, that could make us have a response. But there's also times where we control our emotions and then create eating disorders And that helps us feel like we're in control of everything around us, even though we then throw ourselves into more disarray, more lack of control. We also, when we talk about eating disorders, a lot of people only think about anorexia or bulimia, so being too thin. But if there's a trauma background, we can tend to overeat, which is also an eating disorder, in order to keep people away from us, right? In order to control the environment. If we are heavy, if we don't want people to touch us, if there's been sexual assault, if there's been things, we tend to try to change our physical appearance to keep us safe. And that can obviously create long-term issues. But it is a behavior that we do see. It's a behavior that is fairly common, and it's one that can obviously get the best of us. That was the top 10 of everything that the article suggested, plus a whole lot more that I gave you, because again, it's one of those slides that has like one paragraph under it, and I wanted to really expand the thought process and the conversation. Hard experiences, trauma, change the way that we show up. So how has it changed you? What are the things that you do now that you don't need to continue to do? What are the things that have come up for you in this conversation that you now realize you need to take a stab at and clean them up? What are those things? Are you showing up the way that you want to show up in the now, or are you showing up based on your past experiences? Trauma changed you. Are you sure you want to keep it alive? When you decide to let it go, when you decide to do the healing work, when you decide that you want to show up for you and the way that you want to show up, everything changes. And it's that thought, it's that forward movement that is an essential step into getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you're seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, and now Threads. You can also visit the show notes, my blog, and my other pieces of the podcast on YouTube, or find them on my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. While you're there, check out the courses and Forward Girl Forward Co. It is a great line of new merch that I just released. I'm so excited. You can find it there on TikTok and the shops and on Instagram as well. Grab a piece of great merch to remind you to stay positive and stay grounded. Thank you so much for being a valuable member of this community. If you see fit, please review this podcast as it helps me grow. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.